Thank you for joining me. This is the Facebook Live Q&A session, and my name is Ernesto Nery. I'm the Director of Financial Aid, so feel free, go ahead and ask me questions, and I'm more than happy to answer them.
How do I know if I'm eligible for financial aid?
There's a number of things. The first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you complete the financial aid application. So that can be different for a student who is eligible non-citizen or is a permanent non-resident, or if the student meets AB 540 eligibility criteria requirements. There are two different applications. So whichever the student may fall under, they can complete the financial aid application. The application is the FAFSA application or the DREAM application. Now, after that application is completed, we receive it within about a week, 7 days. Once we receive that application, the student has access to log on to WebAdvisor and view if they are missing any documents, or if they were awarded automatically, and they can do that by looking at their financial aid award. So that answers a part of your question. If you weren't required to submit any documents and you meet eligibility requirements, then you'll see on your award the some type of financial aid award. So it could be the Board of Governors fee waiver fees, or it could be the Pell Grants. Any additional aid, it's possible to see that on your award. Now, if you are what we call selected for verification, then there will be additional documents that the students or parents, depending on if they're dependents or independents, will need to submit. Upon submitting those documents and upon our office completing that, processing that information, and packaging you, your award would be determined, and you as a student would be able to log into WebAdvisor and see your financial aid award.
What type of information will I need to fill out a FAFSA?
The type of information that you'll need to complete the FAFSA application is, if you are completing the FAFSA application, your first and last name, your social security, date of birth. If you are considered a dependent student as defined by the FAFSA application, your parents' information, their first and last name, their date of birth, their social security numbers. If they don't have social security numbers, then the student's parents may be able to put zeros in place of the social security number. So it just depends. You don't want to put zeros if the parent does have a social security number. So it's only if they were never issued that. In addition to that is the income. So currently we're on the 17-18 year. So the income would be what we call prior year, which is 2 years before the current year. So the income for the 17-18 year, which is this semester, would be the 2015 income. For next year, the 2018-19 FAFSA application, the 2016 income would be needed and reported on the FAFSA application. Now, if the student doesn't meet the eligibility requirements for the FAFSA application, they can also complete the DREAM application. And in order to complete the DREAM application, they have to be determined AB 540, and that's done through the Office of Admissions and Records, meaning that the student would have to have attended either an elementary school, middle school, high school, combination of 4 years, and receive a high school diploma, GED in the state of California, and complete an affidavit with the Admissions and Records Office. If they meet those eligibility requirements, then that's complete the DREAM application. And with the DREAM application, the student would need to provide their first and last name, date of birth. If they have a social security number, you can report that. If not, on the DREAM application, it's not required, so the student would not need to put that. If the student is a dependent student, as defined by the DREAM application, dependent, independent requirements, the student will also put parents' first and last name, if they have a social, if they don't have a social, date of birth, and income for 2015 if we're on the 17-18 application, or 2016 income if we're on the 2018-2019 DREAM application.
Paul asks, is it true that it is possible to apply at any point in the year and still get an award, or is there a deadline for each term?
Absolutely. The student can apply throughout the academic year. There are a number deadlines. So for the Cal Grants, you may have heard the deadline March 2nd. March 2nd is the cutoff to the Cal Grants, which is a state award. A student would need to complete their FAFSA application by March 2nd, as well as complete their GPA verification. And that information, if we have enough units, 16 to 24 eligible units, and a 2.0 GPA, we send off the GPA automatically for the student. There's a GPA verification form. But Paul, going back to your question, in terms of applying throughout the year, yes, the student can apply throughout the academic year. So currently we're on the 17-18 year. If you are a student and you still have not completed your FAFSA application for this semester, you can still complete the 17-18 FAFSA application. You can, if you apply, you can still be eligible for the Board of Governors fee waiver. If you meet eligibility requirements, that will waive your tuition fees. If you meet the eligibility requirement for the Pell Grant, meaning that your EFC is below a certain number, then you could still receive the Pell Grant for this semester as well as fall semester. So it's not too late to complete the 17-18 FAFSA application, and that application will be available until June 30th. Also, the 18-19 FAFSA application is available. So if you haven't applied already, even though we missed the March deadline for the Cal Grant, you can still apply for other types of aid, including the Board of Governors fee waiver or the Pell Grant. It's really important, though, that if you are planning on transferring, maybe this year, next year, some colleges will actually have their own internal deadlines to meet institutional aid requirements. So they have scholarships to give out, but they need you as a student to apply sooner than March 2nd. So if you are submitting your college applications this year and you are applying for financial aid, it's a good idea to get that financial aid application done ASAP. It's available October 1st of every year. So apply October 1st, apply October 2nd, get that done. And once that's submitted, follow up with your college financial aid office to see if you are, if there's any additional requirements that need to be submitted, any documents, or if you've been awarded.
Stacy asks, is there any financial aid during the summer?
Great question. So during the summer, financial aid is available. It just depends on how many units you're enrolled in. So some students may be eligible for payments at less than 6 units. And I know it's summertime, so summer is a good time to take classes, but also pace yourself. You don't want to take on 6 units if you don't want to overwhelm yourself. Unless you know you can handle it, you know yourself better. So some students will take 3 units, but in order to get a summer payment, would either need to qualify for a Pell Grant and not have attended for the fall or springtime full-time. So if the student attended part-time, let's say half-time for fall and then half-time for spring, they only received half of their award. So the student attended, let's just use spring as an example. Students eligible for $2,000 for the spring term. They attended half-time, which is 6 units. They end up receiving $1,000 for the spring semester. Student decides that they want to enroll in the summer term. Then the students, if they enroll in 6 units, then they're actually eligible for that remaining amount. So whatever they did not receive during the year, the student can receive that during the summer. Now there's a new Pell Grant available for the summer term, and it's called year-round Pell. And the way that works is prior to this year, students who received a full Pell Grant for the fall term as well as a spring term would have exhausted their total Pell Grant, so they wouldn't be eligible for a payment for the summer. Beginning this summer, those students who attended full-time for the fall and attended full-time for the spring will actually be eligible for up to another Pell Grant for the summer term. And it's based off their units. So if the student decides that they want to enroll in 12 units, although I wouldn't recommend it because that's a lot, let's say a student wants to enroll in 12 units, then they would be eligible for the full-time Pell Grant Award, in addition to receiving a full Pell Grant Award for the spring and a full Pell Grant Award for the fall. So it just depends, but yes, Pell Grant payments are available to students in the summer if they meet specific criteria.
When do I find out how much money I receive?
The student, in order to find out when you receive your money, we actually have a disbursement schedule available on our website. I would refer to that disbursement schedule. So how it works is the student would complete their FAFSA application or their DREAM application, and we receive that information within about a week, so about 7 business days. Once we have it in our system, the student can either be awarded automatically, so they'll be awarded the Board of Governors fee waiver, the Pell Grant. Now, if they're awarded automatically, they're packaged automatically, and they're meeting satisfactory academic progress requirements, then as of that date, if that date is before a certain cutoff, so let's say the cutoff is Friday 4th, if a student is packaged and awarded before Friday, May the 4th, then and their scheduled disbursement is May the 20th, then they'd be eligible to receive that payment on May the 20th. Now, I'm not saying that's our disbursement date. I'm using that as an example. Now, another way it can go is that the student completed the FAFSA or DREAM application, we received that, and now the student is required to submit documents. They were selected for verification. So if the student never submits documents, then their file is never completed, so they will never receive a payment. So that's why it's really important to log on to WebAdvisor, check your status, see if you're missing any documents, if there's anything that you can. Now, if that student comes in, they turn in their paperwork. Let's just say that they turn in their paperwork Thursday, and the cutoff is Friday, May the 4th. The student, the financial aid staff, still need to process that paperwork. So the student wouldn't be packaged and awarded by Friday, May 4th, unless that, we're really not, unless we're not busy and that processor can actually get that done that day. We're really busy right now, so it would be unlikely, but that, let's just say that we have about a 1 to 2 week turnaround processing time. The student's not packaged, so they would not receive a payment for May 20th. They would receive a payment if they're eligible as of the date their file was packaged. So it would be sometime after that May 20th disbursement date. So disbursement schedule, again, is available on our site. So if you look, if you see that you have your financial aid award, if you see that your satisfactory academic progress is satisfactory, in some cases warning, then, and it's done prior to a specific date, that date will determine when your financial aid payment is.
Gabriella asks, what happens to my financial aid if I fail a class?
So if you fail a class and you're receiving financial aid, we have to look at what we call, or what we refer to as satisfactory academic progress. This looks at a student's cumulative GPA per the semester, their cumulative rate of completion, and if they've exceeded the maximum time frame. So if you get a fail, or a student gets a fail in their class, that will lower the cumulative GPA. So that cumulative GPA has to be at least a 2.0 for the semester. So depending on where your GPA is, let's use this semester as an example. Your current GPA is 2.0. You're enrolled in one class. You get a fail in that class. So that fail is significantly going to lower your cumulative GPA below that 2.0. That would mean that you're not meeting that requirement for the semester. So a fail can affect your GPA. It can also affect what we call the rate of completion. So in addition to maintaining and meeting that 2.0 cumulative GPA each semester, the student will need to maintain a cumulative completion rate each semester. So let's say that the student has a 2.0 GPA, completed 6 units, and then this semester got a fail. Then of course the GPA would be below a 2.0. And in terms of the rate of completion, the student out of 9 units would only complete 6 units. So we take that 6 units, divide that by 9, and my math isn't that good, so I'm gonna actually calculate that. So 6 divided by 9 would give us our cumulative completion rate. And in this case, this student would be 0.66. So not only would their cumulative GPA be below 2.0, but their cumulative completion rate would be below the minimum 67% cumulative completion rate requirement. Now, those go hand in hand. So it could be that the student has a 4.0 GPA, but their completion rate is at a 50%, then they would not be meeting that minimum requirement for that term. So that would actually put that student on financial aid warning if it's the first time, or financial aid termination if they were currently on warning status. Now the difference is that if the student goes on financial aid warning not meeting that 2.0 GPA requirement or 67% cumulative completion rate. Now, if the student, it's their second time, which if it's their second time not meeting one or the other or both, that would put them on financial aid termination. And that, as a financial aid student, is what you don't want to do, because termination actually terminates your financial aid for the term. So if you're getting a Pell Grant, if you're getting a Cal Grant, you will not be eligible to receive that until you bring up your progress. So until you bring up your status with a 2.0 cumulative GPA or a 67% cumulative completion rate. Now, the third requirement that I mentioned was the maximum time frame. So that allows the student to receive financial aid up to a certain point. That's 150% of their program. So we're at a 2-year school. So most of our programs are about 60 units to complete. That's 100%. If you can take 50% of 60 units, do the math in your head. I can't hear you, but I'm guessing you're going to say 30. You add that 50%, the 30 units, to the 100%. So the 30 units plus the 100%, which is a 60 units, that gives us 90 attempted units, or 150% of the program. That is the maximum time frame. So if you're receiving financial aid, you want to monitor how many units you are taking, how many units you've attempted, because once you start getting close to that maximum time frame, you reach that 90 attempted units, then you would be terminated from receiving financial aid if you are at that total number of units. So it's really good to look at your transcript every now and then, see how many units you've attempted, and make sure that you're not over that 90-unit maximum time frame. If you're in a certificate program, some certificate programs are actually less than 90 units. Let's take a certificate program that's only 30 units to complete. 30 units is 100%. If you can give me 50% of that 30 units, I hear you. It says 15 units. So we add that 50% to that 100%. So the 30 units or the 15 units, that gives us 45 attempted units. So for that specific program, that student has up to 45 attempted units to complete that program. So it's actually less. So if you are in a certificate program and you know it takes less than 60 units to complete, then you may have less time to complete your program while receiving financial aid. The last thing I wanted to mention on that before I go on to the next topic is, if you are terminated, you have the ability to submit a satisfactory academic progress appeal. That will allow you to submit the appeal form itself, along with the statement, along with the student education plan, and any supporting documentation. So, we've all had bad days, bad terms. It could be that you were having a bad term. You want to provide that on your statement. If you have any supporting documentation, maybe you weren't feeling well and the doctor said you had to be out for a specific time, and it was during that time that you had to withdraw, then you want to make sure to include that on that appeal. When you submit that appeal to our office, it'll be reviewed by a committee, and that committee will review your information, will review your statement, any supporting documentation, and say, hey, this student, is had a bad term, but they're likely to continue, or they're likely, to pursue their educational goal, complete their program. We'll approve it. Or they could say, well, this student has not earned any credit each term. There's a lot of fails, a lot of W's. We need to see some progress, so that we can justify that, hey, the student is making progress towards completing their academic goal. So sometimes a committee will say, well, we need the student to complete the term. Show the committee that you are doing well. Other times there's not enough information, and there's various regions where a student may be denied. And I don't want to discourage you, because you do have the opportunity to submit an appeal, and you never know if that would be approved unless you submit that.
JC asks, what's the difference between financial aid, scholarships, and grants?
So the difference between financial aid, scholarships, and grants. Well, grants and scholarship actually are both a type of financial aid. So financial aid encompasses any type of grant. It could be loans. It could be student employment that supports your educational expenses. So with financial aid, there's self-help aid. In your question, you asked what's the difference between grants and scholarships? Those are a type of gift aid, and gift aid is exactly how it sounds. You receive the financial aid and you don't have to pay it back. So you can use that towards your educational expenses. Gift aid, an example of that would be the Pell Grant. The Pell Grant is money that the student receives by completing the FAFSA application. Their total expected family contribution is determined, and depending on what their EFC is, expected family contribution is, that determines how much they're eligible for. So the student can receive a Pell Grant, and that Pell Grant can be used to pay for educational expenses. It doesn't have to be paid back unless the student receives a financial aid payment and withdraws from all their classes. I'm just using that as an example. The idea is that you use your financial aid to help pay for your educational expenses and to help you move on. The idea is that you complete your educational program. So if you receive a financial aid payment and you withdraw from classes, we as a college are responsible for returning funds back, and it's possible that you as a student, even though you receive the money and even though it's gift aid, because you did not complete the term, then you may have to owe a portion of that money back. Don't want to scare you, because there are cases when you need to withdraw from classes. Worst case scenario, or you had to be out of class. That's when you have the opportunity to appeal. Or also, if you're looking at your transcripts, you can monitor your rate of completion and see, hey, if I drop this class, will this affect my eligibility? Will I still be above the minimum rate of completion? And if you're meeting those requirements, then that's okay. But grants is money that the student doesn't have to pay back. Scholarships, the difference between grants and scholarships is that with grants, that's a type of financial aid that is given from the federal government, is given from the state. With scholarships, those are a type of gift aid, money that's given from a donor. There's specific requirements. The requirements can range. Usually with a scholarship, there's a personal statement. That's not a requirement when you're applying for the Pell Grant or the Cal Grant. There's other requirements. They could be merit-based. So you may need to have a certain GPA in order to apply and be considered for a scholarship. Or they could be based off of your personal statement. Maybe there's things that the is requesting more information, or things that they want you to address in your personal statement. You would submit that personal statement. Scholarships, they are issued out to depending on the scholarship and the donor, there may be a committee that determines, hey, who's the top candidate and award a scholarship. We have a lot of outside scholarships. We also have our San Bernardino Valley College Foundation scholarships, which have just passed, but they're every year, so I highly recommend that you apply. Now, with scholarships, again, it depends on, the awarding process depends on the donor themselves. So with the outside scholarships, we don't have control, and sometimes we don't have all the information in terms of how they're going to communicate to the student or what the timeline is. Sometimes it's posted on our website, but other times, that's up to the donor to provide that information. With our foundation scholarships, we do have set deadlines. We do have criteria, and again, I encourage you to apply. If you've applied for our foundation scholarships, or you've applied for scholarships anywhere else, any outside agency, and you didn't get a response, or maybe you were denied this time, I highly encourage you to keep on applying. Applying for a scholarship is kind of like applying for a job. I know in my case, I applied for a job, a couple of jobs as a teenager, didn't get those jobs, but kept on going, and eventually landed one. The same thing applies with a outside scholarship. Keep on trying. Hang in there. With the more times you apply, the more practice you get. That way, if you're eligible for any scholarships, you know, there may be that letter that says, hey, congratulations, you've been awarded this amount in a scholarship towards your educational expenses.
Stacy asks, what happened if I apply for FAFSA after the deadline? Will I still get my financial aid?
Depends on what the deadline is. We have a number of deadlines. So if you, let's just go with the current FAFSA or DREAM application deadline. So for this current year, 17-18, the last day to apply for financial aid would be June 30th. That's when the application is open. So it'll actually close. So you won't be able to go in there and apply anymore. In regards to the Cal Grant, there is a March 2nd deadline. So if you are applying for financial aid and you miss that March 2nd deadline, this would be for the 18-19 FAFSA or DREAM applications. There's another deadline for the Cal Grant Competitive Award, which is September 2nd, so you can still apply for the Cal Grant. The only difference is that with the Cal Grant Competitive, it is it's exactly what it is. It's a competitive award. So depending on what you put on the FAFSA application, that information is scored, and each question that you answer is scored. So if you earn a certain amount of points, there's a cutoff, and you're awarded a Cal Grant. But you're competing against anybody else who has completed the FAFSA application across the state. So with the March 2nd deadline, they do offer the competitive, or actually the not the competitive, the entitlements award. So for March 2nd, it's really important for those that meet the eligibility requirements for the entitlement award. And with the entitlement award, that means if you meet specific criteria, then you're actually entitled to that Cal Grant award. So you automatically get that. The entitlement award is available to students who are applying for their first year in college, so high school seniors. They can qualify for the entitlement award as long as they complete the FAFSA or DREAM application by March 2nd, have their GPA verified by the high school, and their income is below a certain ceiling. So if the income to household is below a certain ceiling, then they automatically are entitled to the Cal Grant Entitlement Award. Now with the Cal Grant Entitlement, it's also available to students who are currently enrolled in a community college and are transferring to a four-year school. That entitlement award, if the student completes their FAFSA or DREAM application by March 2nd, has their GPA verified by the college, and their income is below an income to household size, or income to household size, or income is below that, then they would automatically be entitled to the Cal Grant award. Now that's just the March 2nd deadline. We do have our own internal deadlines for our processes. So in regards to, I'm just going back to the question, if you just signed on, there was a question that asked, how will I know when I get my financial aid? We actually have deadlines set up so that when the students, when we receive their, either their FAFSA or DREAM application, we receive their paperwork, and that is processed and the student is packaged and awarded. If a student is packaged and awarded by that deadline date, so I'm just using this Friday, May 4th as an example. If the student is packaged and awarded by May 4th, then their scheduled disbursement date would be May 20th. And I'm using that as an example. So I'm not saying that's our disbursement date, but our disbursement schedule is available on our website. So if you're trying to figure out, hey, when do I get my financial aid payment? The first thing you want to do is make sure that either your FAFSA or DREAM application has been completed and it has been received by the financial aid office. It could be that you're transferring in from another college and our school wasn't listed, so you may have an application done, but we never received that. So you want to make sure that our office received that, and you can do that by logging on to WebAdvisor. And when you log on to WebAdvisor, you would either see that you have a financial aid award or that you're missing documents. The second thing you want to do is make sure that we have received all missing documents. As I mentioned before, some students are selected for verification. There's additional paperwork or information needed, such as tax transcripts. Make sure you get that into our office. Once that's in, then our staff would process that. So I mean, depending on the information provided, we go based off of that. If there's any adjustments that need to be made based off of what is being submitted to us, that's done. And then once we receive that corrected information, we're able to package and award the student. Now, once the student is packaged and awarded, you should be able to see that on your financial aid award. So just because you submitted your paperwork doesn't mean that you're automatically eligible for financial aid. So we still have to determine if you're eligible based off that information that you provided us and based off that information that you put on your FAFSA or DREAM application. But if you're eligible, you qualify for a Pell Grant, and your package is awarded and it's by May 4th, then your scheduled payment date would be May 20th. Example. That's not our disbursement date, but I'm using that as an example. So there are specific deadlines that need to be met in order to receive your financial aid.
In what form of payment will I receive my financial aid?
So there's 3 forms of payment that you can receive your financial aid. Right now you can get a check, and with a check, the check is actually issued on that scheduled disbursement date. So if your disbursement date is May 20th, then you would actually receive that check after that date, because that check's not going to be mailed out to May 20th. So probably the following week. Now the student has the option to log on to Money Network and request a Wolverine card. Now the Wolverine card is prepaid debits. It allows the student to use their financial aid funds. So if you are set up to use your Wolverine card, then the payment would be deposited into that card on the scheduled disbursement date. So if your scheduled disbursement date is on May 20th, then the payment would be in that account by the end of the day on the Wolverine card. The third option you have is ACH transfer. And so ACH transfer, the student, if they select that option, the payments are dispersed again on the disbursement date. So let's use that May 20th date again. The student wouldn't receive their funds on May 20th, because if ACH transfer, then it takes about 3 to 5 business days for those funds to actually transfer into your own personal bank account. So that takes a little more time, but that disbursement would go through via ACH transfer, and again, it depends on the bank on how long it takes for those funds to actually hit the account. So there's 3 options. The first option is paper check, which would be mailed out. Second, a Wolverine card, and the third option is ACH transfer into your own bank account.
Gabriella asks, what if my financial situation changes during the year?
Good question. And a lot of times this happens, you know, whether you as a student have lost your job, parents have lost their job, there can be a significant impact on the income that's coming into the household. So in a case where a student's income has been reduced, we do offer what we call a review of income form. A review of income form allows a student to submit any documentation that indicates, you know, the reason why they are applying for an income adjustment. It allows the student to actually explain what's the cause of the income reduction. So, for example, the student lost their job. That's the reason why they've lost their job. Haven't been working since. So that's the reason why they're applying for the income adjustment. On that review of income form, there's check boxes. So depending on the situation, it could be that the student had really high medical expenses, and they have documentation that shows that they paid those medical expenses. There's a checkbox there, and the student would check that. Once they check that box, it would break down what additional documents are required. For the student that loses their job, they would check that box, and then on there, it would say the requirements. So student would need to provide, you know, a layoff notice indicating when they were let go from their job. In addition to that, with the review of income, we're looking at the 2 different tax years. So for 17-18, our review of income is available. We would look at the 2015 income, because that's the income that's reported on the FAFSA application. And we'll also request the income for 2016, so the tax transcripts from both 2015 as well as 2016. We're going to request both the income information for both years, and compare that. So we're going to look at 15 and say, hey, 15 is a lot higher than what it is for 2016. If it's significantly lower and it changes the student's eligibility, maybe the student, when they applied, based off their 2015 income, did not qualify for a full Pell Grant, but after the review of income, reviewing that 2016 income, we look and we see, hey, the student has no income for 2016. We'll go ahead and make an adjustment, and the student will package the student, and based off the new corrections, new adjustments, and if they qualify for additional aid, they'll be awarded that. Now, since we're in the 17-18 year, if the student is attended in fall and they're attending of income, and we are able to determine that the student does qualify for a Pell Grant or additional Pell Grant, we can actually pay that student, and we can actually retroactively pay that student for fall as well as this semester. So that way they get whatever they were eligible, whatever amount of Pell Grant they were eligible for this academic year. But that review of income is available here. It's available at any financial aid office. So if you're transferring and you know that your income for 2016 was significantly lower than 2017, stop by the financial aid office. A lot of times they don't have that form out, but if you talk to financial aid staff, let them know that option is available to any students who have a change in income for the year.
Junior asks, what if my parents don't want to help me pay for college?
Well, it depends. Your parents don't want to help you pay for college. It all depends on if you as a student meet the eligibility requirements to be an independent student. So on the FAFSA or DREAM application, it will ask some questions. It will ask if you're turning 24 years old. It will ask if you are married, if you have children that you support, if you are a veteran, if you're on active duty, if you are an orphan, ward of the court. If you answer yes to any of those questions, then you are automatically considered independent. Or our financial aid office will ask for additional documentation just to verify that. And just to verify that that question wasn't answered incorrectly. Then as an independent student, you wouldn't be required to provide parent information. Now, and that's if you are at least 24 years old, or if you answer yes to any of those questions. I may have missed one, so I apologize. Now, if you are under 24 years old, then and you answer no to all of the questions I mentioned, then for the FAFSA as well as the DREAM application, you would be considered a dependent. And so those are federal requirements. So the parent's information would be required on the FAFSA application if you are under 24. Again, I know some students, they live on their own, they don't live with their parents. There's cases where students' parents live out of the country. The student would still be required to put their parents' information. I mentioned before, as part of the requirements for the applications on parents, it asks for the social security number. If the parent doesn't have a social security number, then they can put zeros on the FAFSA application, or if the student's completing the DREAM application, then it's not going to require a social security number. Now, in that same example, the parent is out of country, then we still income information, and that income information would be whatever that parent earned for that year translated into US dollars. And if they have a foreign tax return, we would need that. If not, then we have other forms for that student to complete so that we're able to determine what the income was earned from that parent. Now, there is one case where a student may change their status from dependent to be a special circumstance, special situation. That form is called a dependency override. That allows our office to change the student status from dependent to independent, given that there were extenuating circumstances and that the student can document that. So, for example, there was child endangerment, and maybe it wasn't a safe environment for the student to be living, and the documentation to provide as part of that dependency override appeal. Another extreme circumstance would be if maybe student never met one of their parents and their other parent is incarcerated, so they have no support, they have no access to that parent. That would be another, just an example of a reason to submit a dependency override. Now, parents, if the student and parents, they get into an argument, I know as a child, every now and then I got into an argument, it's just, that's how families are. If there's an argument and parents just aren't talking, that's not enough to change that dependency override from dependent to independent. There has to be an extenuating circumstance, and part of the dependency override requires 3 letters from professional sources on letterhead. So it could be a coach, clergy, counselor, a doctor that would be willing to provide a statement on that student's behalf, supporting the students to change their dependency status.
Do I need to be admitted to SBVC before I can apply for financial aid?
No, you do not need to be admitted to SBVC to apply for financial aid. You can actually apply for financial aid prior to submitting your admissions application. This happens a lot with high school seniors, for example. Maybe they don't know what college they're going to, so they'll list Valley College, they'll list Cal State, a UC. They can list a number of colleges. Once that information or that school is listed and they submit their FAFSA or DREAM application, we'll receive those records automatically, and we'll only receive it just for San Bernardino Valley College. If the student lists other colleges, we don't have access to that information. But we'll receive it. And if the student has not submitted their admissions application, once the student submits their admissions application, we'll use identifiers such as name, date of birth, a social security number to determine their FAFSA application with their admissions application. And once that's matched, then that information is available for the student to view. That information meaning if the student was awarded or if they have additional requirements, that would be available to view on WebAdvisor.
Can my aid be transferred to another?
Absolutely. It all depends on when you decide to transfer. So if you are currently, let's say you attended Valley in the fall term, so you received half of your Pell Grants, and you want to transfer to, let's say, Cal State San Bernardino in the spring. Since the student only received half of their Pell Grants for the fall, when they transfer to Cal State San Bernardino, they can transfer their aid. They just have to make sure to add Cal State San Bernardino's school code onto their FAFSA or DREAM application, and then complete all requirements with their office. They can receive the remaining aid at that college. It depends on if the what we call the period of enrollment is on a different date than what our college has. So period of enrollment, I don't want to use big terms, but let's just say that we pay the students grants for the fall semester, and the fall semester ended December 22nd. So a student goes to, decides that, you know what, after December 22nd, I'm using that, don't quote me on that, I don't know if that's the exact date, but December 22nd as an example, that student decides to go to the Academy of Art University, and their spring starts December 1st and goes into to March 15th. That's where that can become an issue because we cannot disperse aid with 2 period of enrollments at the same time. So if you're planning on transferring, you want to make sure that when you receive financial aid, it doesn't, the dates or that period of enrollment, that from the beginning of the fall term to the end of the fall term, doesn't overlap with with another term for the college that you're transferring to. I don't see that with Cal State San Bernardino, but a lot of the private technical vocational colleges, their periods of enrollments may be at different times that don't necessarily align with ours. So it's good just to inquire with our office or with another financial aid office wherever you plan on attending and transferring that. The last thing I wanted to point out that if you are getting a Cal Grant award, there are a number of Cal Grant awards where students receive those and they never they transfer, but then they forget to transfer that Cal Grant award. So it's sitting on our list, and that student, if they don't transfer that Cal Grant award, they can end up losing the Cal Grant. So it's important that if you are getting a Cal Grant, that not only do you add the school code to your FAFSA or DREAM application when you're changing the schools, but you also log on to the Cal Grant website, which is webgrants4students.org. Log on to that website and change schools, because if that Cal Grant is not paid for one term, it's possible that you can lose that Cal Grant. And going from a community college to a four-year school, Cal State or UC, if you're getting a Cal Grant B, that's going to make a huge difference. At a community college, we have the Board of Governors fee waiver, so that will waive the tuition fee. And on top of that, with the Cal Grant B, the student will receive the Cal Grant Access, which is $1672 for the year. If the student transfers to Cal State San Bernardino or UC Riverside, and they transfer that Cal Grant B, that Cal Grant B is actually worth more at the Cal State or UC, because that Cal Grant B will cover the cost of tuition at a Cal State or UC. And on top of that, give the Cal Grant Access, which is a $1672. So the value of that Cal Grant is actually worth more. So if you're getting a Cal Grant already, make sure to log on to webgrants4students.org and change where you're receiving the Cal Grants.
What happens if I add a class after my aid has been released?
If you add a class after you're released, then depending on if the number of units that have been added change the amount that you're eligible for, you may get an adjustment. So let's move back a little bit. When you receive any type of federal Cal Grant, it's based off of, or payments are based off of the number of units that you're enrolled in. So the scale is, if you're enrolled as a full-time student, 12 units, then you're eligible for the full award for that term. If you are enrolled in 3/4 time, 9 units, all the way up until 11.5, then you're eligible for 75% of that award for the term. If you are enrolled in half-time, or 6 to 8.5 units, then you're eligible for half of that award for the term. If you're enrolled in less than 6 units, depends on eligibility requirements. So only the students with the highest Pell Grant eligibility can receive a payment at less than 6 units. If you are, let's say, in 6 units, and you add, you receive your Pell Grant at halftime, and you add a 2-unit course, you wouldn't receive a payment because you haven't increased to the next level of payment. So, 6 units, adding 2 units would put you at 8 units. So 8 units is still less than 9 units, which is the minimum for 3/4 time. Now, if you enroll in a 3-unit class, let's say you're in 6 units, enroll in 3 units, then you're in 9 units. That would put you at 3/4 time. So you would actually get an adjustment to receive your financial aid. It would probably be on the next payment. So you want to refer to our payment schedule, which is on our website, to see when that would be. But yeah, you would get an adjustment. So it is based off of units that you're enrolled in. If you add units and you're eligible for more aid, then we'll go ahead and disperse that amount to you. Now, it works vice versa. So if you are enrolled in 12 units and you get a full Pell Grant award, and you drop to, let's say, 6 units, then what happens is we need to make an adjustment, because we have to pay you based off the number of units you're enrolled in. So you got a payment for units at 12, or for full-time, so at 12 units, you got the full payment, drop, and we have to do an adjustment. It's called a change of enrollment. So we actually have to recalculate your payments and do an adjustment. And any money that you received over that the amount that you're eligible for. So let's say 12 units, you receive $2,000. It dropped to 6 units, so you're actually only eligible for $1,000. Change of enrollment, we could be requesting the amount that's due. So because you're at 6 units and you receive 2,000, you're only eligible for 1,000, then you'd be responsible for repaying that $1,000 back, and we'd have to return those funds. I hate to say that, but you know, it's really important that this information is out there so that students, when they're adding or dropping classes, that they keep that in mind. If you have any questions, feel free to come by the financial aid office. We can let you know prior to you adding or dropping classes, because you don't want that to affect the financial aid that you've already received, or the financial aid that you're going to receive in the future.
Stacy asks, does the financial aid office offer student loans?
At this time, the financial aid office does not offer student loans, or actually federal loans. Students, they can go through another servicer, another loan agency, and apply for a private loan. We'll go ahead and certify those, but we don't offer any federal direct loans. We don't participate in the program. And we can't advise a student to go to, for example, Wells Fargo or Bank of America to apply for a loan. There are private loans out there, number of places you can get them. My recommendation is that if you're at a community college and your tuition fees are paid for and you're also getting a grant to pay for your books and expenses, to minimize the amount of debt that you may incur with student loans. Because eventually you're going to have to pay them back, and payments add up. So I did, just in my case, my experience, went to college, got more than I thought it was okay getting a certain amount of loans to cover expenses, and when I had to go back into repayment and I started paying back that loan, I realized that I could have bought a pretty nice car with that money now. So I'm currently paying back a loan that I got probably about 15 years ago. It's been a while, but yeah, so just keep that in mind. They are available to you. We don't offer them. We can't tell you where to go. But if you do apply for a private alternative loan, we can certify that. Last note on that is we can certify the private loan only if you have enough unmet need. So if you maximize your unmet need, and the way that's determined is we take the cost of attendance and we subtract your EFC and all aid. Whatever's remaining is your unmet need. If your unmet need has been exhausted, then even if you applied for that loan, even if you're approved, we can't award it because you don't have your cost of your expenses have been met. So keep that in mind, and we can always check that for you. Any question on that?
JC asks, is there really a scholarship for left-handed students?
There's a scholarship for anything. There's not a scholarship for left-handed students offered through our campus. But if you go through sites such as FastWeb, do other scholarship searches, yeah, I won't say there's one for left-handed students. I'm saying it's possible. There's scholarships for a number of things, and it could be your background, your origin. It's funny that you bring that up, because that's there has to be one, because I've heard that question more than once. But yeah, as far as the donors, as long as it's not through our campus and it's an outside scholarship agency, they can offer a scholarship for whatever criteria they provide. So if they say you have to be left-handed in order to apply for this scholarship, then great. I have no idea how they'll prove that. Maybe they'll ask you to I don't know, but yeah, you can. There's a number of things that factors or criteria that a student can meet, and a number of scholarships with specific criteria that students need to meet in order for those students to apply for. Again, here we wouldn't be able to provide a scholarship through our foundation office for a student who is left-handed.
How do I know if I've done all the paperwork I need to do?
Good question. So you can log on to WebAdvisor and you can check your financial aid award. If there is an award on there, then usually you're not packaged until all documents are received and are processed. You would also want to check if you're missing any documents. So if you're missing any documents, then your financial aid is not completed or processed. So you want to make sure that you have been packaged, awarded. Any question in regards to that, feel free to come to our front counter staff. They'd be able to provide you the information in terms of what your financial aid award is, if you've been packaged, if you've been awarded. If you are emailing us, our email is faid@valleycollege.edu, or you're calling our phone line. Keep in mind that just for privacy reasons, just to protect the student's privacy, we only release general information through our email and through our phone. So if you have any questions in regards to your award when you're looking at that on the Web Advisor, feel free to come into our office, and then we can let you know if you've been packaged, if you've been awarded, if you're meeting SAP, if you're scheduled for payments.
Do I have to reapply for financial aid every year?
Absolutely. Yes, you want to apply every year. So just because you've done the application once and you received the financial aid payment does not mean that you're covered for the upcoming years or through the remainder of your college life or experience. You want to complete the either the FAFSA or DREAM application every year, and those applications are available October 1st. So October 1st, the application is available. Make sure to get that application done as soon as you can. If you're applying to four-year schools, keep in mind that some of their deadlines are a lot sooner than that March 2nd deadline that we say for Cal Grant. So the best thing to do is just once that application is available, complete that, get that done. Now at a prior year, so you don't have to worry if your taxes were not filed for the previous year, because we're looking at the year before that. So for 18-19, for 19-20, we're going to be looking at the prior year taxes. So that would be 2017, and now we're on 2018. So those taxes should be filed, and if you or your parents filed for an extension, then soon after, once that extension and taxes are filed, you can go in and log onto the FAFSA or DREAM application and complete that. However, filing your taxes is not a requirement when completing your FAFSA or your DREAM application, although you eventually want to file them, because then you're going to be asked if you filed or not filed. And we as a financial aid office, if you're selected for verification, may request the tax transcripts for that year. So just keep that in mind.
Last question. I probably don't qualify for aid. Should I apply anyway?
Absolutely, yes. That's surprisingly, that's a super common question. You do want to apply for aid, even if you don't think you qualify, even if you've applied before and didn't qualify for anything. The reason is you never really know. The formula changes each year. Formula meaning how your income, asset, parent, household size information is calculated on the FAFSA application. That changes each year. So it could be that you qualified one year, formula changed, and you actually ended up qualifying another year. Another reason is because if you are, it could be that you may qualify for at least a fee waiver, and that would pay for your tuition expenses, that $46 per unit fee. That's something less that you have to pay for. Some colleges will require you to either complete the FAFSA application or the DREAM application to be considered for their institution, their scholarships. So as part of the financial aid process, even though you know and they know that you won't qualify, which is, unless you complete the application, that's the only way to really determine if you do or don't qualify. But some colleges will actually require that application to be completed, so that way they can determine, institutional aid that you may be eligible for. So it's always good practice just to get the application done, just to apply every year. Again, one year you may not qualify, one year you might. You may be required to, depending on if you decide to transfer, and that college of your transfer choice may require you to complete that. Now, my time's up. I had a lot of fun. It was great speaking to everybody. If you didn't get your question answered, not to worry. I will be back at 5 p.m. for another Q&A financial aid session. So other than that, I hope you have a great lunch, great rest of the day, and Again, thanks for joining me.